What's up, everybody? It is I, the JUICEman3941, or the JUICEman for short, and I'm coming back to you from another episode of the Gaming Roundtable. Come have a seat, pull up, listen to me talk for a little bit. And I haven't done a video in a while, and of course there's reasons behind that. I have at the same job, but I've switched shifts where I got to get up super early now. And I got promoted, so that helps me with the finances. And I've been slowly but surely going to start really hardcore planning for the wedding that I have coming up to my beautiful Desiree next year. Special shout out to her. Love you, miss you, come home soon from New York. Now, that's out of the way. That sounded harsh, but now that that's out of the way, I want to talk a little bit about changing tides, and this is the name of this video. It's episode 22. Make sure you subscribe to the Unpaid Gamers and the Gaming Roundtable. And by the way, if you would like to be a guest on the Gaming Roundtable, please hit up the administration, myself, or Posthuman Guy on Unpaid Gamers, and you can join in on my discussion and the topic if you'd like. For 3 seasons, I've asked people to join my discussion. No one ever wants to. I don't know why, but here we go. Changing tides. So changing tides is basically about how the industry is really changed in the past 2 years. I'd say the last 2 years based on Star Wars Battlefront 2 and bullshit microtransactions, the fact that gambling's a big thing. My last video and other people's videos on YouTube, such as Yang Yao, Angry Joe, and a variety of others, basically broadcasted on the fact that EA tried to change the definition of loot boxes to surprise mechanics. Now, one of the things that is very bothersome about that, there's so much that's bothersome about it, but changing tides is all about how the Asian market of games, specifically one of the biggest publishers is Bandai Namco, and or Piranha Bytes or other British-made companies are putting out games galore, none of which have virtually none, if not any, microtransactions. It's the AAA companies that are failing. Black Ops 4, basically Activision said, we will not put any microtransactions in our games. And what did they do? Put them in there a month later after they just didn't meet the sales expectations. It did sell very well, but not like they wanted. And then now they're putting weapons in some of the crates in the black market, which again is egregious, and they boldface lied. We know all about the Battlefront 2 stuff, how that all had to play out. We know about how Shadow of War. We know all about the stuff that's been going on. We can't trust the AAA market to give us just a good game anymore. I said it before. These companies are making platforms to make money disguised as a video game. The changing tides is what's interesting, is that indie sales are at an all-time high. Games like Dead Cells, Death's Gambit, and others of that kind, even Bloodstained Ritual at Night that came out, that's a very Metroidvania, it's an awesome game. These are games that are selling really well. Genesis Alpha 1 sold really well in the terms of indie-like numbers, and I own that game, it's a great game. You have a ton of these small titles that are coming out and that don't have any microtransactions. There's no frills. You buy it and you get pretty much everything that comes with it. And I think it's a really cool thing that they're doing that. The Bandai Namco side of things, with releases like God Eater, Code Vein's coming out soon, and Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice, and a bunch of stuff that they're publishing don't have any of these issues. They don't have gambling mechanics, they don't have loot boxes, they don't have surprise mechanics, they don't have any of the things that are plaguing the Western audiences, and they're having a great success at it. Funny things like EA saying that single player is dead, and yet some of the biggest single player games that came out, last year, Spider-Man, God of War, the Wolfenstein series has had incredible amounts of success with no microtransactions and solo stuff. EA, I'm still shocked that Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order coming out has none of this in there, and it's strictly a solo game. So but I look to see if I'm shocked that they didn't want any of that stuff in there. And if the game's going to sell very well because it is Star Wars. Star Wars games sell like maniac. We haven't had a good, decent Jedi game probably since the first Force Unleashed. Not that the second one was bad, but it was way too short and too easy. And the one before that, I'd say, was the original Battlefront 2 or Jedi Academy. And we haven't had a really decent game in that particular genre in a while. However, we are getting too much of this BS from that side of things. Piranha Bytes' stuff and other British publishers and game developers out there, CD Projekt Red and stuff, they are gangbusters on their stuff too and having a very good time. Outward, I think it's called, or Outworlds. No, it's Outward, a roleplay game that came out by them. Very, very well done and well received, and it's an excellent RPG, open world, and it doesn't, again, feature any of that stuff. This came out recently that EA came out and basically made a statement that they were very surprised. Well, it wasn't recently, it was months ago, and it's kind of been buried, but it's been put on, statement has been made that they were very surprised at the success of a game like Monster Hunter because it's a niche title. It's not for everybody. It has a loyal following, kind of like Dynasty Warriors, but it doesn't have that large numbers, and yet the game went on to sell, like, I think between 16 and 18 million copies. I mean, not shipped, sold. And more and more people keep discovering the game and figuring out that, there's no microtransactions, there's a couple DLCs, but they don't cost much, and you go fight the monsters, and that's your loot, and you build better loot from the monsters, and it's that gameplay loop and exploration and things that happen there. And EA could not understand how a game like that was so successful versus a Star Wars Battlefront 2, which only sold like 7 to 8 million copies, not shipped but sold. And when you stop and think about that for a minute, and you think, how is it that a niche title outsells Star Wars game? Well, simple, because they fucked up everything when it comes to that stuff, and they messed it all up with the microtransactions and the loot boxes and all that crap, and that got all removed from the game, but too little too late. I don't care how many updates has come, and the game's 118 gigs now, which is about the same size as the base ESO online for the PlayStation 4, Xbox One. I don't understand that logic from them. See, but Capcom, they made a good game. They made Monster Hunter still appeal to the core base fans that were used to its kind of hard to learn type of gameplay and game loops and systems, but then also somehow managed to balance it enough for casual people to get into it too, and EA can't understand that. And I don't think Ubisoft as a company, EA as a company, or Activision as a company, being the three biggest publishers right now, and I don't include THQ Nordic, even though they're doing great stuff, but I don't include them in that lot because they're not giving us games like these other three are. They would never conceive right now, outside of EA and the Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, which I'm still shocked they're not putting microtransactions and stuff like that in it, and it's a single player game. I don't think EA's core people, Ubisoft's people, and Activision's people would sit around and going they could never conceive of putting a game out that didn't have loot boxes, crates, or whatever, surprise mechanics, and or microtransactions and DLC. There's no way they would do that. They can't even, because it's so ingrained in in those companies' culture to do that they have to do that. It is very important for them to do that. Now, recently, and I know everyone knows that I shit on Ubisoft a lot, and yet I buy almost everything they own. I've said that many times. Everyone knows me. I recently picked up Division 2 for $15. and I started playing it. I found it interesting that you can earn these little crates, and you earn like cosmetic gear out of them, and that's pretty neat. And you know, you earn things from in game. And I didn't buy the original because I felt like the beta was too similar to the first game. And after playing Division 2 for a few hours, I started realizing that yes, the parkouring or the moving traversal in the game is much more fluid. I feel like the armor that you now wear that drops down before it hits your health, I think that's a good thing, and you can repair it later or repair it in battle, or that it goes back up once you're out of combat. They have made a lot of changes to Division that I think really benefits that game. Yes, it still kind of feels like the first game in many ways, and yet it doesn't. You're still a silent protagonist, of course, but I do think that the cutscenes and voice acting is better, and I do like the Washington setting. So, do I still feel like that it was worth $60 when it came out? And my answer is no, it's not. I don't feel like Division 2 was a $60 title. I feel like it was a $30 title. That's where it should have been when it came out. Maybe even a $20 title. Just because I feel like what they did was they took the first game and said, how do we improve? How do we make the game and again, Ubisoft did this. It's like Watch Dogs. Watch Dogs 2, it's freaking amazing game. Amazing game. But it has all the stuff in place the first game was supposed to have. And I feel like Division 2 did that. It has all the stuff in place the first game was supposed to have and didn't have. And that's another one of those. That's why I don't think Division 2 should have launched at $60, or I think it should have launched at half that, personally. Other than that, I don't think that these three companies could ever fathom making a game that didn't have those monetization in it, that's so deeply rooted in their company that there's no way they could. And to say the things they said about Monster Hunter is interesting, because it makes you wonder, it makes you realize that they really don't have a clue, and they don't want to make actual video games. They're not video game companies. They no longer, what they are literally doing outside of Ubisoft Starlink, which I've talked about, and outside of the Jedi Fallen Order, these three companies, Activision included, they're literally cashing in on nostalgia with rebranding Call of Duty. It's just Modern Warfare. Hey, it's back. No, you're bringing back characters that died. It's a reboot, and you're doing things in order to get your sales. But do you think the multiplayer in the new COD is not going to have, quartermaster stuff and DLC and microtransactions? Yeah, it's going to have all that. It's going to have all that because that's what it has. When they remastered Modern Warfare, they put those in there, and they didn't need it, but they put them in there anyway. And again, they just can't conceive of that. These companies, and I've said this on a previous video, they are literally not making video games. They are making software platforms in order to make money. Disguised, camouflaged, hidden away. Hidden, camouflaged, disguised as a video game. I can control a character. I can hit the trigger button and shoot something. I can fire off a magic missile or some shit, but ultimately, it's the same old. But ultimately, they just want this. You pay $60 for the game, and if you want these maps, and if you want this cool weapons, if you want these cool cosmetics, you gotta pony up. It's absurd. And I've talked about this before, and I've talked about arbitrary grind. The changing tides part of my video I'm talking about is how the gaming people at large, are starting to look at other game companies and buying games from them. They are buying indie titles like Dead Cells, like Death's Gambit. They're buying games of that nature. They're buying British titles, Outward, Elix, games like that are offering people players and stuff that, that's pretty surprising. They are buying games from Spiders, like Greedfall's coming out. Go look at that. That game looks amazing. It's going to be an amazing role-play game. And it's just one of those things where when you stop and you think about this for a minute, these companies are probably thinking, how are these little titles garnering so much success? Because they're not doing the stupid shit that you all do. That's why. They don't need to. And that's important to understand that, you know. That's very important to see that, you know. And look at 2K with NBA 2K20 coming out. You know they're going to have these unskippable advertisements in that game because they tested that with 19 and everybody seems to be upset about it, but everybody still bought it. And that's my other thing about that, is that gamers continue to support the fucking games that they're mad at. You keep buying COD every year and Madden every year and everything every year, and you're directly responsible for this. And how can you buy a game? Let's say you buy the new Call of Duty and you spend $60 on the game, $50 on map packs or some stuff, and you buy cosmetic stuff, and next thing you know, you've spent $200 on a game, and then 10 months from now, you're going to be buying, or 11 months from now, you're going to be buying the next COD that comes out, and you may go back and play the old ones, but statistically, most people don't, and they just play the new ones. So playing the new ones means, hey, you just wasted that money on that shit. Because they divide the community with the maps, they do all this stuff, and so, or let's say Madden, you know, you're just buying an updated roster every year. I'm gonna spend $200 or $300 on MUT cards that you cannot carry over to Madden 2021 when it comes out, and you can't do that. They're worthless transactions. You spent money on that for nothing. Are you really gonna go back and play? If you spent $300-$400 on MUT cards on Madden 19 and you buy 20, are you really going to go back and play 19? The answer is no. Statistically, most people trade that one in while the trade is kind of high and they're getting $20 or whatever for it. And that's my point. You literally now spent, because you traded that game in, you're buying on that game in FIFA and the sports titles have no, you don't nothing. You spent money on nothing, and then you'll just do this cycle because you just can't stand to let one pass. Oh no, my friends are buying Madden. I love Madden. I gotta buy it. And it's like, no, you don't have to buy it. Changing tides here is looking at other borders per se and trying to see what else is out there. I've got God Eater 3 by Bandai Namco. It is their basic version of the first two were made by Shift, and now Shift's making Code Vein, and this company that made God Eater 3 is still part of the same company. I played the game for 50 plus hours. I have yet to finish it, but the gameplay loop of that with its Devil May Cry-like combat, but it's also a Monster Hunter style game, or a Monster Hunter genre. Get parts from enemies, build better shit, weapons and armor and whatnot. My point is that that's a game that doesn't have anything in it, microtransaction-wise. There's nothing to buy. Everything is earned through the loop of the game's system. And it came out for $60, and I will get hundreds of hours out of it and never had to drop anything but my original entry fee price. That's how you make a game. But you know why it's like that? Because the Asian market, they're not about loot boxes. They're not about doing what the American. They're very much purists. They really love their niche anime characters. They love those convoluted stories. They love those angsty kind of teenage emo people. They love all that. That's their thing. And when you are, they don't care about the money per se. I mean, they do, but they still care about the tradition. And Japanese gaming is very traditional. It is. Look at the Yakuza series and how it's over time had marginal improvements, and slowly but surely it's gotten better. And yet the game doesn't have any of the bullshit that Activision uses or Ubisoft does or EA does at all. It doesn't need to. Yakuza has provided me hundreds, the series. I've got Kiwami 2, I got Zero, I've got Kiwami, I haven't bought Song of Life yet, but my point is, or 6, I have gotten hundreds of hours out of the game. The mini games, the combat, the story is some of the best storytelling. And with none of that bullshit, these companies, just like Piranha Bytes, THQ Nordic publishing stuff, the old Vigil Games became this, that made Darksiders 3 and stuff, they are actually still making video games. They are making video games. Real, honest-to-God video games. Why do you think retro games are so? Why do you think they're putting out classic collections and Super NESs and stuff? Because people remember the days when we didn't have to deal with the bullshit with microtransactions, all the gambling, all the bull. That's what I'm saying. The British companies out there, CD Projekt Red, Piranha Bytes, all those type of characters that are out there, and the Japanese market, you know, the Bandai Namcos of the world, the Marvelouses of the world, they are putting out games that are actual video games. The American companies, Ubisoft, Montreal, no, that's Canada, but I'm talking about the North American, that's part of that. They are putting out platforms to make money. They are not making video games. They are disguising it as video games. And the only reason that they don't just flat out have, you know, numbers in a slot machine and bullshit is because then it would be gambling. They have to disguise it as a video game so they can get away with doing that. The changing tide, people, is you all need to look at other borders and buy the games from them, because you're going to get your video games back. You're not going to get a video game from Activision. You're not going to get a video game from EA. You're not going to get a real video game. Ubisoft is slightly off the hook. They're not, but they are. Yes, they do have microtransactions. They do have DLC. They do the same stuff that Activision does and EA does, but they still are providing games like Division 2. There's a lot of game mechanics. You run around. It's not their way of handling DLC microtransactions, and like playing Assassin's Creed Odyssey and stuff. They're there, but they're not intrusive. You don't feel. I look at the stuff and go like, yeah, you know, but they never throw it in your face. EA and them constantly do that. You've got a box. You've got this. You've got that. They don't try so as much. They're in the game. I don't think they should be, but they don't try to throw it in your face, you know, continuously. Changing tides is that these companies are going to start to wonder, and they already have, about these indie game titles or other bigger game companies bringing games to market with none of that bullshit and them being successful. And they're trying to figure out, why do the games that we're bringing out not as successful as they used to be? That's why. You know that these YouTubers, the community, the government, all these different people are looking at your games and with a microscope going like, you're fucking people over. You are doing things against people who have addictions and stuff like that, and it's causing them to be addicted to your game because of microtransactions, they're losing their money and all this shit. And you know this. There's no way that any of you can be oblivious to this. Some of you gotta go home and watch YouTube or see the news and stuff, and you still do it anyway. And you still are walking around in the office going like, how come we're not as successful? How come our franchise... Motherfucker, what do you mean, how do you not know? Look at what you're doing. How can you not know? The changing tide is that these other companies from the other parts of the world are coming down on you and raining down on you with their success. And at some point, you know, EA and Activision and Ubisoft, y'all have all had a tremendous amount of layoffs. EA did. You didn't hear a lot about it, but they did. You think you're immune. You really, really think you're immune from going out of business, but you're not. You're not. THQ did, and they were a huge company. Atari did. They were a huge company. Huge. THQ in particular. At one time, THQ was the third largest video game publisher in the world. They were publishing the wrestling games, which consistently sell. They were publishing a ton of stuff, and they went under. You know why? because on their end, they just never really capitalized on their successes, which I talked about in a way early video. But the point is that they weren't immune to the stuff that affects them. And if EA and Activision and Ubisoft do not get their shit together in the next couple years, you're going to see less returns on your investment, and you're going to piss your shareholders off, and you're going to see more layoffs, and that's what you're going to see. And once that Pandora's box it cracks a little bit, you could find yourself on the chopping block. You really could. You think you won't. Doesn't matter that you make $800 million every year on the MUT cards from Madden, on top of the $60 that you sell. Interestingly enough, that bottom could fall out. It doesn't matter that you make $1 billion on the FIFA cards, because at the end of the day, you still have to pay everybody. You got to pay the CEO. You got to pay, and that slowly but surely, this could happen if you keep pissing people off. If you keep making people mad, and you're not giving us video games, you're just giving us platforms to make money disguised as video games. Changing tides, ladies and gentlemen. I look at other titles now. I do not buy a whole lot from them anymore. I still buy games from Ubisoft because I've said it before. They always make video games. They don't necessarily make a complete platform because they still do give you a game. They always have an interesting concept behind their video games. It's the one thing that always gets me involved with their video games, from Wildlands to Division to Rainbow Six to Starlink to all that. They always make really interesting concepts. They just do. Where other games like Arcane Studios and stuff, that make like Dishonored 2, which I recently picked up for like $8.99, which I don't think was as successful as the first one, but it's still really, really good game. They don't. And again, other video games, people, the community, you gotta start supporting the other games. You just have to. You don't have to buy COD every year. You don't have to buy Madden every stinking year. You don't. And it's okay. If your friends are like, man, you didn't pick up Madden, you're like, no, I didn't, because I'm not putting up with this bullshit. Because it's the same fucking game as 19. I'll just keep playing 19. It's the same game. At least I can use the cards I bought. That's my point, Who cares about a roster updates? If you can trade players to teams, you can update the fucking roster yourself. It might take time, but I do it in my wrestling games. I buy wrestling WWE 2K freaking 19 or whatever, and I was like, great, now I got to spend time going to the website, putting everybody, what belts go to who's ever the latest, change some stuff on the wrestlers, get updates from the internet, and make mine as close, if not picture point for the week, that whatever's going on in the WWE universe. It takes time, but it's worth it, and I've done that historically. Did I buy WWE 2K 18? No. Did I buy 17? No. Did I buy 16? No. Did I buy 15? No. The last one I bought was 14. I wait until 3 or 4 years down the road, a couple years, to where I'll rebuy one, because I know enough changes have been made at that point. I'm not just buying a roster update. It's important to understand that. And I'll leave you all, gamers, with this. In the world of changing tides, you got to look outside the box. There are other games coming out down the road from other companies that deserve your time and your attention. There are other game companies out there that are giving you an actual video game. There's no slot machines, there's no loot boxes, there's no loot crates, there's no surprise mechanics that are ethical and fun. None of that's in the game. And these are the companies that you really should look at. In September, we have a game coming out by Spiders, and Focus Interactive is the publisher, called Greedfall. It looks incredible. Check out that game, because that's going to be an actual video game. We have Call of Duty Modern Warfare coming out this year, a rebranded, rebooted series that is banking on nostalgia, that's going to have absolutely microtransactions. You're going to pay $60 for the game and $50 for a season pass, and then God knows how much more to get the cool guns and the cool shit out of the quartermaster. And you're gonna, by the time it's all said and done, you've probably paid $500 for the entire game, which is bullshit and nonsense. And by the time that you've done all that, the new COD will come out. You don't have to buy it. If you keep supporting them, they will keep doing it to us. That's all I have to say. This has been episode 22 of the Gaming Round Table, brought to you by Unpaid Gamers. Again, I want to thank you for watching this video in advance. I had someone join very briefly. I guess they thought I was going to play Evolve. I mainly just have Evolve playing in the background so I can talk, because it will show gameplay and stuff from the game. A game that I actually still play 2 years after it's come out, even though the servers are gone, and you can play offline. I just want to tell you all that I'm sorry that I haven't been making videos as much as usual. And I would like to also express that that I do appreciate my subscribers. I do appreciate you listening in to the Unpaid Gamers and JUICEman guys brought podcasts and gameplay. And thanks for listening in to the rumblings of the Juice Man here on the Gaming Round Table. And as always, gamers, good gaming.